Hello, my name is Beata. Welcome to another one of my videos. In this one, I will tell you about the symbolism and meaning of the Ten of Swords in the Thoth deck. As usual, I will start with a description of the card, and then we will dive deeper into the symbolism of all of the elements that we can see here. I will list the meanings of this card in Divination at the very end of the video, and the timestamp for when I start talking about that is shown below now, so you can jump there if you want. The first look at this card tells us that we are in an even worse trouble than we were in the 9. The background looks like an explosion here. 9 of the swords are striking the 10th swords, the middle one, and they're breaking it into pieces. As in most of the cards in this suit, we have the same sharp geometric shapes in the background. The hilts of the swords draw our attention again, and in a moment we will find out what is their meaning. But first, let's find out what Crowley tells us about this card in the Book of Thoth. The hilts of the swords occupy the positions of the Sephiroth, but the points 1 to 5 and 7 to 9 touch and shatter the central sword, 6, which represents the sun, the heart, the child of Chokmah and Binah. The 10th sword is also in splinters. It is the ruin of the intellect and even of all mental and moral qualities. So we will start by diving straight away into the Tree of Life, but before we do this, I just wanted to let you know that you can support this channel by liking, commenting and subscribing. You can also become a patron of the channel for just €3 per month, so that's a little over $3. I also accept one-time donations through PayPal. All links are in the video description below. Thank you very much for considering this. Your support secures the future of this channel. Okay, let's get back to the Ten of Swords now. Crowley tells us that the hilts of the swords mark the Sephiroth on the Tree of Life. Almost all tens in this deck show the symbols of the given element arranged in the form of the complete Tree of Life, and the exception here is of course the Ten of Wands. All tens show us the complete manifestation of the power of the suit. And as you probably remember from my previous videos, the complete manifestation always invites destruction. It always yearns for change. It is starting to make space for another element, so we always get this feeling of something outlasting or outgrowing its usefulness. The 9s in this deck are more positive in this way. The energy is not entirely complete, but just a step before being too much. Of course, the suit of swords is the most problematic of all 4, so the fuller the energy is here, the more damaging the results are. Let's hear how Crowley describes this in the Book of Thoth. The number 10, Malkuth, as always, represents the culmination of the unmitigated energy of the idea. It shows reason run mad, ramshackle riot of soulless mechanism. It represents the logic of lunatics and, for the most part, of philosophers. It is reason divorced from reality. And we will see now how this is illustrated by all of the swords in this card. The first sword, symbolizing Keter, has scales on the top of the hilt. And this is where we still have balance. The energy is still pure here. The symbol of the scales also shows the highest form of the energy that we are dealing with here. And because this symbol is related to the sign of Libra, we can guess that this energy belongs to Saturn. Saturn is exalted in the sign of Libra, which means that their energies complement each other. Saturn can accomplish a lot here. But why Saturn? The card is associated with the Sun in Gemini. Here we need to reach for the astrological concept of triplicity rulership, the same one I mentioned before when we were talking about the Seven of Swords. So basically, this means that the signs of the zodiac are divided into 4 groups, that we call triplicities, because they consist of 3 signs each. The suit of swords is connected to the element of air, and Saturn is the day ruler of air triplicity. Mercury is the night ruler here. So in the Ten of Swords, because we are dealing with the fullest energy of air, we also need to deal with the limiting influence of Saturn. And the hilts of swords here will be showing us different aspects of Saturnian energy. So the first sword was associated with Sephira Keter and Saturn's exaltation in Libra, the highest form of the energy. It's also interesting to notice here that both sides of the tree of life have been resolved here in a way. We have the same hilts marking the Sephiroth on both sides of the tree, so the opposition of energies has been brought to a common ground. The second and third sword, marking Hokmah and Binah, have an hourglass within a square and compasses as their hilts. This symbol shows us the limitation of space and time that the energy gets when it passes through these two Sephiroth. The square on compasses is a symbol used by Freemasonry. The square symbolizes strict moral rules. It shows a defined measure for the rules that need to be followed. The compasses is used to draw a boundary line. So symbolically, it relates to remembering our boundaries and therefore avoiding overindulgence, maintaining moderation in life. These instruments are also very much connected to creating and defining space. We use them when we create structures, when we want to trace a path on a map, and they help us relate to the physical space around us. And through this, they symbolically show us the second Sephira Hokmah, where the pure energy gets its first limitation of space. Saturn is the last planet of our system that we can observe with the naked eye, so it shows us the limits of our perceivable space. Saturn is also connected with self-control and feelings of responsibility. The hourglass is a pretty straightforward symbol of time that is connected to Binah, the Sephira ruled by Saturn. This is the gate between the realm where everything is eternal and the realm where everything has a lifespan, where everything starts to have a life as we understand it. And therefore, this is also the place where death begins. The fourth and fifth swords have ornamental crosses on their hilts. These swords show us Hesed and Gevura on the Tree of Life. The cross can symbolize Christianity here, or maybe organized religion in general. A similar cross with round elements at the end of each arm is called a pommel cross. The round objects can symbolize apples or gold coins. Sephira Hesed, connected with Jupiter, shows us laws and justice. So this is where we start to create rules, so we can say that this is also where religion or philosophy has its beginning. Gevura, on the other hand, is the place of destruction. It has quite a chaotic energy. It's linked to planet Mars, and it shows us that some of the rules and structures built up in Hesed will have to be destroyed if we want to create balance. The symbolism of the ornamental cross can be showing us a religion that has gone too far. It starts to be concerned with material gain and power, and therefore starts to lose its main purpose. It will have to be destroyed so that something new can be built. And it doesn't necessarily mean a literal physical destruction. This can be just the destruction of some of our beliefs. And I think most of us have gone through this experience when we start to see the cracks in some religious or philosophical belief, and it just stops resonating with us the more we learn and the more experiences we have in the world. So we destroy this idea within us and we can start to build up a new one. Saturn is associated with institutions that manage people's assets. It's connected to tax collectors. Its restrictive energy feels very much at home in a powerful government institution that creates laws to limit people's freedoms. And I think this is the power of Saturn that is hinted at here. The religion or philosophy becomes an institution. It starts to be more about managing assets rather than truly helping people. It becomes too big and powerful, and because of that, it resists destruction. We don't balance Hesed and Gevura correctly, so the following Sephira, Tiferet, must be destroyed. There will be no coming back to the balance of the middle pillar, because through our actions we have destroyed our heart, our center, shown here as a sword with a heart and a golden yellow disk of the sun as its hilt. We also hear that there are 10 rays emanating from the disk. And this is, of course, the number of Malkuth, the material manifestation. So the rays are another echo of our focus on material gain and the fact that we have abandoned spirituality. The energy has become a soulless mechanism. It has lost its purpose. Some of the significations of Saturn also include anxiety, bringing yourself down, depression, and sorrow. So we can see how this energy influences what happens to our very center of being here. The 7th and 8th swords have 4 pointed stars as guards. This type of star is sometimes referred to as the Star of Bethlehem, and it's also a symbol of 4 directions. And we can say that this could be a symbol of our general direction in life, where we want to go and what we want to achieve. 7th Sephira Netzach is ruled by Venus and is showing us how we follow our passions. The 8th Sephira Hod is connected to Mercury, and this is our intellect, our language, and learning. So these two Sephirot together show us what direction we want to take. We follow our passions, and that gives us a more embodied experience of the world, but on the other hand, we also learn and make sense of what we experienced. We communicate our experiences with others. The shape of the star points is quite aggressive here. It shows that what we experienced was difficult, and we also made it worse with trying to make sense of it intellectually. Saturn is connected with difficult experiences. Some of the keywords for Saturn's energy are petty, malicious, miserable, accusations, being orphaned, and imprisonment. It is also connected with spirit possessions and depravity. So we can see here how difficult experiences, and what's more important, our inability to understand and make sense of them, can lead us into a very dark place. I've tried to decipher the symbol on the 9th sword for quite some time, and I haven't seen it mentioned anywhere else, but I think this is a crab, a symbol of zodiacal Cancer. The 9th Sephira Yesod is connected to the moon. The sign of Cancer is ruled by the moon, and this is a sign where Saturn is in adversity. It's the sign opposite to Capricorn, where Saturn has rulership. And this means that Saturn doesn't feel at home here. It's a very alien and uncomfortable placement. Yesod is our subconscious. It's the power of connection, and it is sometimes called the engine room of creation. So this is where the energy from the whole tree of life is transmitted and manifested from in Malkuth. Saturn is the energy that separates, exiles, and creates distance. So, in this way, it is the opposite to the energy of the moon that wants to connect and care for. So, we already see that Saturn creates an obstacle here. The connection with the manifested world can't be maintained correctly. There is a limitation on what can be created in the material world. The very last sword, representing Malkuth, has an inverted pentagram and a crescent moon on its hilt. Crowley tells us that this sword is also in splinters, although we don't really see it in the card. And it would make sense, though, if we consider the limitation in manifestation created by Saturn. Anything that manifests is already damaged. Inverted pentagram symbolizes matter over spirit. We are focused too much on material gain, and therefore we lose sight of our spiritual life. And I've explained this symbol in more detail in my video about the Five of Swords. Malkuth is connected to Earth, and we have a symbol of the moon here because the moon is connected to our physical life. It signifies our body, but also our home. And this is where we feel safe and taken care of, and this is our comfort zone. And it's also shown here to emphasize the completeness of the energy in this card. We have a glyph of the sun at the top of the card, so there is also a symbol of the moon at the bottom. And we have seen a similar concept in the Nine of Wands and in the Seven of Swords. And again, the energy of Saturn is shown here as the opposite to that of the moon. Malkuth, our kingdom, the place where we should feel safe and happy, turns out to be a dark and desolate place ruled by Saturn. So we have talked extensively about the Tree of Life in this episode. Let's now have a quick look at the astrological attribution of the card, and then we can move on to the meaning of this card in divination. The Ten of Swords is connected to the last decan of Gemini, and this is the time between the 11th and 20th of June. All tens in this deck are associated with major turning points on the wheel of the year, solstices and equinoxes. And the Ten of Swords is connected to summer solstice. This is the longest day of the year, so we can say that this is when the sun has the most power, but it is also the moment when the power of the sun starts to gradually decrease. So the energy that we experience here is that of an end of a cycle, and we can compare it to a full moon energy. Let's hear now what Crowley has to say about the astrology of this card. The card is also ruled by the sun in Gemini, but the mercurial airy quality of the sign serves to disperse his rays. This card shows the disruption and disorder of harmonious and stable energy. So, again in this suit, we have the same problem. The fiery energy of the sun is being scattered by the airy quality of Gemini, and the suit we are in is only making things worse. Fire and air are both considered to be masculine or active energies. They both have the same polarity, so there can be no balance here. The sun likes to focus on something, it likes to achieve things, and it wants to be seen and admired. The mutable air sign of Gemini is too inconsistent to be helpful here. It likes to change its mind, and it's very flexible. It can never decide to focus on just one thing. Of course, not all is lost here. Crowley shows us a light at the end of the tunnel. This card teaches the lesson which statesmen should have learned and have not. That if one goes on fighting long enough, all ends in destruction. Yet this card is not entirely without hope. The solar influence rules. Ruin can never be complete because disaster is a stenic disease. As soon as things are bad enough, one begins to build up again. When all governments have smashed each other, there still remains the peasant. At the end of Candide's misadventures, he could still cultivate his garden. So we can see that there is always a possibility to rebuild what was lost. And people who are not directly involved in conflict will be the ones to survive. Crowley also mentions Candide here, and this is the main character of Candide or the Optimist, a satiric novella by French philosopher Voltaire. In essence, Voltaire in his book ridicules religion, theologians, governments, armies, philosophies, and philosophers. No wonder then that the book was banned immediately after its secret publication. Nowadays, it's considered by some to be one of the 100 most influential books ever written. The main conclusion of the book is that searching to understand God and finding reasons for existence of evil only brings people misery. In the end, the main characters decide to just focus on simple manual labor of cultivating their garden. And this helps them to put their natural talents to a practical use and brings them peace. A very interesting thing here is that Saturn is also connected with farmers and gardeners because he rules the soil. And we have to remember that the glyph of Saturn is a sickle. And so this is our solution when everything is falling apart around us, our philosophies, religions, and governments fail us. It's time to earth all of this airy energy. It's also interesting to notice that the Sephira connected with the Ten of Swords, Malkuth in the world of Yetzirah, connects to Tiferet in Asaya. And this is the Six of Discs. So it's another pointer to what comes after the Ten of Swords. The only way to leave this energy is to move to the earthy and fertile energy of Moon in Taurus. This is the placement where Moon is exalted, and this card is associated with success and good fortune. So maybe this is also why we have a crescent moon at the very end of the Tree of Life depicted in this card. It is showing us what to do next. Now I'm going to tell you a bit about the meaning of this card in Divination. Ten of Swords shows us ruin. Our thoughts are against us and have caused a complete failure of our plans. With this card, it is also possible that we have become a target for someone who is gossiping and spreading false rumors about us. This card shows that thinking ourselves out of the situation is not an option. We have reached the limit of what we are able to achieve intellectually, and unfortunately, the very limit of our thinking is a complete disaster. It's not all doom and gloom though, because this card can also show the disaster that ends a given problem. The situation has gone too far, and we need to deal with this difficult energy to progress beyond it. And the way to deal with this energy is to use a practical and down-to-earth approach. We need to endure this and come out on the other side. The experience can make us stronger, it can teach us something about ourselves and about the world. If this card describes a person, this will be someone who can't be trusted. This person can be violent and cruel to others, but they prefer to work behind other people's backs. They might have a tendency to gossip, they might lie about other people to make themselves look better. Ten of Swords can also show a person who is going through something terrible right now. So this can be someone whose world has just fallen apart. They might be experiencing a huge loss. Whether this will be a relationship or a work-related reading, the Ten of Swords will tell us that things will go very badly. It can mean a breakup of our relationship or that we will be fired from our job. The only upside to this card is that whatever happens, it clears the path for something better. Of course, if we are able to understand this experience correctly. In spirituality, the Ten of Swords shows us that we are in a very bad shape, And this should be an alarm bell for us that we need to take some rest. We need to figure out what is happening with our energy, and maybe someone is trying to interfere and harm us. As always, cleansing and protecting ourselves is of utmost importance. If this card shows up in reading as an obstacle, it means that the matter at hand has gone too far. The negative thinking around the problem has brought on a disaster. Failure most probably cannot be avoided, but try to approach the issue with the most simple and practical way. Don't think too much, forget strategies, just act in the most basic and straightforward way. As advice, the Ten of Swords shows you that the only way out is through fire. What you are currently struggling with needs to collapse entirely, and only then you will be able to build something new. Don't try and stop the disaster, wait for it to blow over, and once the fire has nothing left to consume, it will die, but you will still be there, ready to start something new. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and please remember to like the video, leave a comment, and of course subscribe to my channel. I would like to thank everyone who is already supporting the channel. I appreciate your help very much. And if you want to help secure the future of this channel, please consider a one-time PayPal donation, or you can become my patron for just €3 per month. Once 100 people sign up for my Patreon, all of the patrons will be able to suggest and vote for future content of the channel. So if you want to have your say in what videos I create next, click on the link in the video description below. Every little bit of support and every donation is great help and is greatly appreciated. Once again, thank you so much for today, and I will see you in the next video about the Knight of Swords very soon. Thank you. Bye.